Hi, friends. Welcome. I am just getting set up here for today's live stream. Hope you're all doing very well on this Sunday. In a moment, I'll start putting my list together. For any of you who might be new, please take a look at the video description or the pinned chat message so that you can see how to request a free reading. I'm planning to use my CBD, that's Convert Ben Dove Tarot de Marseille by the late Dr. Yoav Ben Dove. And this is published by, where is it? US Games Systems. It's a great workhorse deck. You've seen me use it a lot. And I'll light a candle here and burn some Palo Santo to get us started. While I'm lighting this on fire, let me say hello to the folks in the chat. Hello, Jean. Hello, Tori. Hello, Priscilla. And hello to anyone else watching in the wings. You're all very welcome here. My name is Will of the Hermit's Lantern Tarot. I'm going to do some free live readings today in order of first come, first served. And I guess as I'm burning this Palo Santo, maybe I'll just give my disclaimers, which is that these readings are, of course, for entertainment purposes only. As I read, I'm open to answering almost any question you might have to ask. There's some I might reject, but I'm mostly open to anything, with the caveat that this is, of course, for entertainment purposes only. I do find that my answers can be more precise when I have a more precise question. So I will do general readings, but if at all possible, I'd like to narrow it down into some general area of life. And I'm also available for paid private readings for anyone who might be interested in those. And you can check out the Linktree link in the video description for more information. You're also welcome to email me at tarot.hermit.lantern@gmail.com. And I offer private one-on-one video conferencing readings, usually using Google Meet now because it doesn't have a time limit. I also offer, at a lower price, pre-recorded audio readings. And I have a cup of tea here to keep me warm and energize me. And today I am drinking some peach chrysanthemum tea. This is a black tea, a loose leaf tea that I purchased at a local crystal shop, in fact. And it's peach chrysanthemum. Very tasty. I never knew that I would enjoy drinking chrysanthemum flowers, but here we are. It's quite good. So let's start assembling today's list. It is the 26th of April, of course, 2026. And let me scroll up in the chat here. And so it looks like the first to request a reading was Jean, followed by Tori. and Priscilla. One of my very best friends is named Priscilla, in fact. All right, and Stormborn. So that's 4 to get us started. I'll probably go up to a maximum of 10 today. Though we'll see how it goes, play it by ear. After 10, I'm usually pretty pooped, so let me do some preliminary shuffling of these cards, as I don't believe I've used them since last week. I pretty much reserve this deck now for my YouTube readings. I have a lot of other decks, but this is my YouTube deck. And I see a question in the chat from Tori. Hi, Tori. About whether I do medium work and speak to those who have passed privately. And my answer is that I have, yes, for myself. I have done this, but I would be open to doing it for others too. In fact, I would say that it's something I think of it more as kind of ancestor work, but it is something that I have done for myself, and I find it very rewarding. Um, so yes is my answer. All right, and then I see hi Cat Goddess. Cat Goddess, I'll add you to the bottom of the list here. All right. Tori, it's totally up to you. I'm open to doing that kind of question sort of publicly here in this space, but if it's something that you would prefer to be private and that's not, available for others to listen to, and I record the live streams, of course, and then they're posted on my channel, and so anything that's said here is potentially accessible by the public at large. And so if you'd rather that were private, I'd be happy to schedule a private reading with you. Um, but if you don't mind it being public, then I'm okay with it if you're okay with it. Okay, so here is the list as it stands at the moment. Jean, Tori, Priscilla, Stormborn, and Cat Goddess. And so we'll start off with Jean today. Jean, if you'd care to post your question, I'll pull some cards for you and let's see what we get. And we've got the question here from Jean, which is what are Jean's ex, who's a Virgo, what are this person's feelings and intentions towards Jean? So let's shuffle these a bit, shuffle the question into the cards. And let's see, what are Jean's ex, the Virgo's intentions and feelings towards me? Haha, I sound like your ex? Well, I've never dated a Jean, so unless you've changed your name, it can't be me. Boy, that would be funny though, wouldn't it? If I found myself reading for my own ex, not knowing that, that it was my ex. All right. I'm definitely not him. Okay, good. Hi, Noxie. Welcome. Yes, I will add you to the list as soon as I finish Jean's reading. I'm going to go up to 10 today at the most, but Noxie will put us at 6. Okay, so let's focus on Jean here. And on Jean's ex, what are Jean's ex, who's a Virgo, what are their feelings and intentions towards Jean? And we'll pull 3 cards, of course, to start as per usual. All right, we've got the Ace of Batons, 5 coins, and the Hermit. Hermit is the first major arcana that comes up today. All right, let's take a look at these feelings and intentions of this Virgo towards Jean. Well, the first thing I see is the way in which we've got the baton here, which sort of traditionally in cartomancy is referred to as an opportunity. And with the 5 of coins, I think because we have 5 fingers, I think of grasping onto something. And with it being coins, I think of grasping onto something which is important or valuable. If you think of the way that coins are symbols of value, right? So we could think about an opportunity to grasp or get a hold of something valuable. Uh, and then, of course, with the hermit, well, the hermit is single, right? The hermit is going off alone to do their own thing. They're on their way off to their cave. Uh, and so, the something that is often implied in not just Jean's question, but in this question generally, because as those of you who watch tarot card readers on YouTube know, um, this question or the form of this question of what is this other person, often an ex, what are their intentions and feelings towards me? Well, that's probably the most common question that we get, right? And rightly so. We all want to feel that we have made an impact on those we have dated in the past, on former partners, and so that's an understandable motivation for asking a question like this, especially when you're not in contact with that person, and so you can't, well, observe them or ask them, right? Uh, and so to sort of get at the answer to the question is, um, I feel like there is a sense of feeling or thinking towards Jean that there might be an opportunity to grab onto something valuable regarding their relationship because this person finds themselves feeling kind of alone, right? Single, right? And so there is a possibility here that he's thinking, if only tangentially, about coming back, I guess is the way that I'd put it, right? Because I think that what's implied often in this question of what is my ex thinking and feeling is, you know, are they coming back? Do they want me back? Are do they miss me? That kind of thing. I've asked the exact same question for myself about former exes or former partners, I guess I would say. Uh, and so often the motivation there is like, well, even if I don't want them back, do they want me back? Right. Um, and so often the answer is no. Right. But here there is a little bit of a person, certainly the ex, looking back, facing to the left, about something valuable that they had, right? An opportunity that they had. Now, the other thing I'd add to it is, of course, that we want to look not only for what we see on the table when we pull cards, but what we don't see. Yeah. And so, in a relationship reading, which obviously this is, the suit that would be most apparent regarding feelings of love or desire, that kind of thing, would of course be cups, right? And we don't see those here, right? And so, um, the nuance I would add to this, if he may be thinking back about how valuable the connection that you had in the past was, the opportunity that you had together at one point, uh, he's not necessarily looking back on it in a sense of um, a great feeling of love or desire, but it might be more. Um, of him wanting or thinking about, even if he's not gonna act on it, because that would probably be a different question, but, him thinking about, um, negotiating a way into not being alone again. Does that make sense? Right? Like, in other words, he might be looking back on it less because of a profound love for you and more because um, he found value in being partnered with someone, right? Um, and you're sort of you come to mind, right? Because there was something valuable that he remembers in the relationship that he had with you in the past. So in the chat, Gene, you'd said that you think he just got divorced, and so seeing him show up here as the hermit would make sense, right? Because a single man, especially when we don't see any other people cards on the table, the court cards or other of the major arcana that depict human beings on there, right? So we have a single man who's alone and he's looking back. He's thinking about the past and he's thinking about an opportunity he had and the sort of value or importance of it as he grasped onto it that he doesn't have anymore. So there you go. He's shining his light. We could also add with the hermit specifically. He's got his lantern, which is where I've of course taken the name of my channel here, and we could think about shining his light in order to see something he couldn't see before. So maybe we could think about like how did it go wrong, right? He's thinking about, if things didn't work out with you, and if he's getting divorced, things didn't work out with this other person. He might be looking back and thinking, trying to understand what is wrong with my relationships, right? Yeah, we can look at the surprise card for underlying energies, and that card is the Knight of Cups. And so here we do now get a cups card, right? I had mentioned a moment ago that we don't see any cups on the table, and that's true. But the surprise then, because I think following my teacher Camelia Elias, I follow her idea that the card at the bottom of the deck, which can be what you don't see or underlying energy, she calls it the surprise card, right? And so it's like the surprise, the unexpected, that kind of thing. And so it's the Knight of Cups here. And so the Knight of Cups, those of you who are familiar with the tarot know, this is your romantic person, right? Someone who's attempting to develop a relationship, often a romantic relationship. They're not a king or a queen. It's not something they've already achieved, but they're making progress towards it. And so the surprise could be not necessarily to you, but the surprise for him, because of course we're reading this from his perspective. We ask the question with him as the subject, right? Your ex as the subject, and so the surprise to him might be that he does feel romantic feelings, and given that this is the surprise card at the bottom of the deck, it suggests something that he may not actually be completely consciously aware of, even though it could still motivate his behavior, right? Which is something that, of course, in one way or another, happens to all of us. We all have things we're not aware of or not completely aware of that still motivate our behavior. Um, so, uh, feeling himself kind of lonesome and alone, looking back on the value of the opportunity that he had with you, and maybe even unbeknownst to himself, um, wrestling with some romantic feelings that still linger after the end of your relationship. Yeah, and then of course more generally, because as you're saying, Gene, in the chat, that all the women he's been with have broken up and left him. So I think he's trying to understand that, right? What is it about his relationships or his personality or his character or his values or his behavior? What is it that is consistently leading others to leave him, right? Okay, now I promised Noxie that I would add Noxie to my list. So I'm going to do that before I forget. And let's also just scroll through. Hi, Pinkest. Hi, Chaloon. And so, Pinkest, I can add you to my list at the bottom. Pinkest. And Chaloon, I'll add you to the bottom of my list as well. Great. And Selama, I'll add you to the bottom of the list as well. All right. Okay, so that gets us our first reading for the afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. And so here is the current state of the list, and you're very welcome, Jean. And so next up on the list, we have Tori. So, Tori, if you're here and would like to post your question, you're welcome to do that. All right. And so Tori says, "What does my mom want me to know right now? She passed a year and a half ago. Her name was Andrea. She was 55 when she passed." All right. So I'm happy to read for this question. I'm so sorry to hear about your mother. It's resonates with me. I lost my mother in 2022, so almost 4 years ago. It's very difficult to deal with that. Oh, she was a Wiccan. My mom was not. my, my mom was not at all a Wiccan, but that's cool. Something you could, well, I don't know if you're Wiccan, but I suspect since you're interested in tarot that, not that that makes you Wiccan, I'm not Wiccan, but there's some overlap in your interests, right? And maybe in your belief systems as well. Thanks, Chaloon. I appreciate that. All right, so What does Tori's mom want her to know right now? Four Swords, the Chariot, hmm, and Six Batons. Okay, so we've got movement here with the Chariot, moving from one thing to the other, given that the Chariot's in the center of the three-card string. And so, of course, I read left to right, unless I have a good reason not to. And so we're moving from swords into batons. And so with the swords, uh, swords hurt, right? So swords can be pain. They can also mean order, that kind of thing. But here we have something um, that hurts, right? And uh, with the Four of Swords, we can think of this as, because it's four, we can think of anything that's square or rectangular, right? And so with this card, I often think of things being hidden in the sense of being kind of buried away, right? Or locked away or underground or that kind of thing. And so, I cannot help but take the context that you've offered in the chat here, and think about um, death and a burial, right? And what's buried? Well, it's something precious and delicate, represented by this flower in the center of the Four Swords here. And so, uh, we can think about. Um, Perhaps your mother, right? Who's passed on, and, there's a sense then of movement away from that, right? The something is over. Something is buried now, and your job is to get in your metaphorical chariot and drive off into the next thing, right? And here we've got the next thing, which is six batons. And so with batons, we can think about putting in effort, building relationships with others. I often think of the batons as the kind of social suit in the tarot, in the sense of, it takes effort and work to build relationships with others. And so I feel like there's a message here, a sense here of moving on from what's buried, what's ended, into building strong relationships with um, social relationships with others who are still here, right? And so I think the message is it's okay to do that, right? Um, in other words, I know it's a little cliche, but don't dwell on the past, right? Don't, not that there's anything wrong with grieving, um, but I think there's a sense here of like, don't let your grief keep you from um, building relationships with others who are still present with us, right? I suppose we could even say that with the right kind of people, grief can be a means to building those relationships, right? Like if there are, for example, other members of your family or mutual friends, um, instead of thinking of yourself as dwelling on the past in for example, sharing memories about this mother who's passed on, is there a way in which that could feed into or give you a means to strengthen your relationships with others um, who are still present in your life, right? Um, so there's very much a sense of like keep going here, right? Another way we could point to that is with the way in which four tends to be a number of stability, but also things not changing, right? When things are stable, that means they're not changing, they're not shifting, right? Whereas with six, we think more about movement, right? Getting things from point A to point B instead of something being static. It's about like go, right? Um, and of course, we see the movement in the chariot because the chariot's a car, essentially, right? It's a vehicle for movement. And then the one last nuance I'd add is because these are batons, the six of batons I often think of in terms of um, sometimes you have to go back to go forward, right? I could talk about all the different sixes and what they mean, but for the sake of brevity, I'll just say um, with the six of batons, it can mean in order to get moving forward and to make progress or turn to the next chapter or whatever it is, you need to make sure that you've carefully, very carefully sort of read what came before, right? That you understand what happened before. And that is the way that you'll be able then to move on, to move forward. Um, we could also add like moving on doesn't mean forgetting. Yeah. Well, I hope that that gives you a little peace, Tori. This is something I like to do, um, especially around Halloween. But other time, throughout the year too, I'll do it is, ask a mother or a grandmother or other, family members who have passed on who I was quite close to. I think about what would they say about this problem that I have or how would they feel about the choice that I've made recently, that kind of thing. And it helps give me insight and perspective, to think about things through um, their way of thinking. Yeah. Okay, so let me take a peek at the chat here. Hi, Ari and Rahul. Welcome, welcome. So, let's see. I think Chulun, I got Salam, I got so Ari. I'll add you to the bottom of the list, and then I'm going to have to. Well, let's see. I'm going to add Rahul, and I'm going to add Jas Happy Medium, and then I'm going to close it. All right. So, because my plan was for 10 and now I've got 12. And so I've got to draw the line somewhere. And so there I've drawn it. If a bunch of people are not here for the readings, maybe I'll be able to open it up. But um, this will probably get me through the next at least hour and a half. So next up we have Priscilla. Priscilla, if you're here, you're welcome to post your question. And hello, Ayushi, and welcome to anyone else I might have missed in the chat who might be new. You're all very welcome here. Okay, yeah, we can do a career question for Priscilla. And Ayushi, to answer your question, so right now I've closed the list just because the way I do this, and I'm glad you're a new subscriber. Hello, I'm Will. Um, I go with first come first served, and I form a list at the beginning of the live stream, and I usually aim for about 10. Because 10 will get me through 2 hours, 2.5 hours or so. And by then, I'm pretty exhausted. So I'm up to 12 right now. So I've closed the list for today. However, if folks are not here, because I give everybody 3 chances, I'll call their name 3 times. And if they're not here, then I'll skip over them. And if enough people do that, maybe I'll have time to reopen it. But I want to honor the commitments I've made to read for these folks on the list. However, of course, I'd be happy if there is extra time today to read for you, or of course to read for you in a future live stream. And then I'll also just add for anyone who might be new, I also am available for paid private readings. And you can check out the Linktree link in the video description if anyone is interested in that. Okay, so Priscilla is asking about career and wants some advice because at the moment things seem a little too quiet on the job front. Yeah, and the context is that she's not currently employed. Okay, so the question is like, what can you do to advance your career at the moment? Okay, for Priscilla, what is some career advice for Priscilla? All right. So we'll do 3 cards and see what we get. 7 coins. The lovers. Okay. And 8 batons. 7 coins, the lovers, and 8 batons. Okay, let's look at this. I've got several things floating around in my head. Okay, so the first thing that I notice is, of course, with the lovers card, we're not talking about a relationship. And so, seeing it here, especially at the center, we could think about the idea that you may have a choice to make. Yeah. Because the central figure on the lover's card is sort of torn between 2 options. And in the image, it's between 2 other people. But given the context of your question, these people could certainly represent career options, right? As opposed to lovers or something like that. So we could think about the advice that you have is that you're going to have to make a decision, or maybe in the moment, like maybe right now, that there's a decision that you are facing. And this figure on the lover's card does not know what to do, right? He's if you look at his body language, there's a lot of hands moving about in this picture, and um, N he's drawn both ways, he's looking to the figure on the left, but his hand is over here with the figure on my right, and so he's stuck in between. You can also look at the way that his feet, one faces one way and one faces the other, so he doesn't know which direction to go in, and he's sort of waiting for divine intervention. He's waiting for an angel in the sky, Cupid here, but he's waiting for some signal to just tell him what to do, right? He's waiting for the arrow to hit him so that his choice will be made for him and so that he kind of doesn't have to make the choice, right? It's sort of a ridiculous situation. He's presented with a choice, but rather than make the choice, he's waiting for something else to tell him what to do. And uh, that may be a long time coming. How long is it going to be before Cupid fires the arrow and the decision is made for him? And so when this card comes up, sometimes uh, what I think is relevant is to sort of say, listen, you have to decide. Um, if you sit around and wait for someone else to make the decision for you, or wait for a sign from above or something like this, you might be waiting forever. And so, unfortunately, what you have to do is choose for yourself. Um, which can be very difficult, right? Because what if you make the wrong choice um, and feel like you end up regretting the thing that you decided to choose and all of that. Um, so that's the first thing that comes to mind is seeing the idea that there's a choice before you. Um, the other things or other thing next thing that I notice is the way that this card is flanked by money on the one hand, because of course you're asking about career, which means certainly money is implied there, right? Because we work for money, of course. Um, and so we've got coins, we've got money over here on one side, and then on the other side we've got batons, which I would think of as the actual act of working, right? Um, but with batons, we build things, right? It can be relationships, but here we're in the context of a career, of job. Um, so if we look at the numbers, we can see 7 coins to 8 batons, right? And so what do we notice? Well, there's one more um, quantity or degree of effort put in than there is reward in terms of financial compensation, right? So there's a sense here of like being forced to make a choice about working, doing a job that doesn't pay as much as it should. Yeah. Um, you have to do, say, 8 units of labor, 8 hours of labor, or whatever it could be, but the reward is only 7 units, right? So you're not getting. It's not a fair exchange. It's not 8 for 8, and it's not like there's a surplus where, if we had 10 coins for 8, well, that'd be nice because then you've got 2 extra coins left over for all of your trouble, right? And so it's saying here for your question about career that you're stuck in a kind of ridiculous situation in which you're being asked to choose um, to do work which is not adequately or appropriately compensating you, right? So it suggests that, like, perhaps there is some kind of job available, but the only job that seems currently available to you is no good. And so I hope you don't take my laughing as flippant. I'm laughing um, because if you don't laugh, you'll cry, right? Because the job market is so bad, at least where I am, and of course, I don't know where you are, um, but I have friends and loved ones who are looking for jobs, and it's just an absolute nightmare. Um, Mostly there just aren't any, and when there are, it's hundreds of people applying for one position, and then even when you get the job, often it's like there aren't good benefits and it doesn't pay enough, um, and so in some sense, I think what's probably happening here, if the situation where you are is anything like the situation where I am, which is just sort of validating your concern, which is to say, yeah, the job market right now is ridiculous, and people are not being adequately compensated for the work that they're putting in, and that presents us then with some really tough choices that we have to make. Um, so those are the things that immediately come to mind when I look at these 3 cards. Why don't we look at the surprise card and, um, see what might be in there? Okay, so the surprise card is the Knight of Swords, and so, of course, with all of the knights, we think of movement again, and so, um one way to perhaps reframe this a little might be to think of it as, the Knight of Swords. What is the Knight of Swords doing? What is his function? And it's to go into battle, right? Go like entering a war, that kind of thing. He's not a Knight of Cups going off on the quest for the Holy Grail, and he's not the Knight of Wands who's maybe setting out to develop relationships or play a game of polo and compete or something like that. No, he's got a sword, and a sword is a weapon, and we use that to fight, like in a battle, that kind of thing. And so the surprise here, the thing that's maybe not totally known, um, might be to suggest thinking about the job market more in terms of a battle, right? Like you take no prisoners, that kind of thing. Well, also, of course, as I said before with the first 3 cards, validating the ridiculousness, the impossibility of the current situation with the job market. But if we're thinking about like, well, sort of on a prescriptive level of, well, then what do I do? If this is what things look like, what do you do? And then I would look here to the surprise card with the Knight of Swords. Um, you have to keep writing forward with the sense that you are sort of in a battle um, to get that job, right? Whatever the job might be, and then of course we could also say at what point, and of course you would have to answer this question for yourself because everyone would have a different answer. But at what point do you accept a job, maybe because you have to, right? Even if only temporarily, which is just not a good job. You know what I mean? That is not paying you for all of the effort, paying you fairly for all of the effort that you're putting into it. So that is, in some sense, is just validating, I think, what you already know about the job market. Um, and in terms of the advice of like what to do, um, I think it's acknowledge that this isn't only happening to you, that it's kind of a widespread problem, social problem. Like one other insight, and then I'll move on, which is, so if we had seen the Knight of Batons come up here, right? Then we might think something like, demonstrate to employers that you are ready to work really hard for them, right? Or if we had seen um, the Knight of Coins, we might say, demonstrate to employers that you can make them lots of money, right? Seeing the Knight of Swords here suggests demonstrate to employers that you will fight for them, right? That like an employer might be interested in someone who's ready to be a soldier for them, right? It's not just someone who's a worker who will work hard, not just someone who is a good thinker or is very devoted, that would be the cups, but someone who's ready to like take heads on the battlefield for them, that kind of thing. That might make you a more alluring um, candidate. Yeah. Okay, so that brings us to number 4, which is Stormborn. We've got Stormborn next. So, Stormborn, if you're here, feel free to go ahead and post your question in the chat. All right, and we've got the question from Stormborn. And the question is, why does Jordan talk kind of strange with me? All right, we can read for that. If you wouldn't mind, could you tell me what is your relationship to Jordan? Like a friend, family member, romantic partner? Ah, ex-husband. Okay. Okay, for Stormborn, why does Jordan talk kind of strange with Stormborn? All right, 3 cards. First card is the Lovers, followed by Force or Strength, and 3 coins. Let me look at these a moment. So, um, I wonder, I wonder, first off, if, um, if is he in a relationship with someone else? And the reason I ask this is because with the Lovers card again, um, as I explained a moment ago in a previous reading, we have one figure between two others, suggesting being pulled in multiple directions, right? And so, um, w- I would see him here in the middle, and then you are one of these women. But then I would just wonder, is there another woman or person involved? Is there that kind of dynamic going on? Um, because it seems to me that he feels that he's stuck in between two options, presumably you and someone else, but that one of them, who's got to be you, given the way that you've phrased your question, is like literally more powerful, is more, we might say, imposing. If you look at the size of the figures, they're quite small here, but they're all the same size. But then one of them becomes like twice as big, right? Um, so there's a sense, I think, that I mean, I don't want to say that he's afraid of you, but I think that the way he's interacting with you, or speaking, I think was the exact way you phrased the question, has to do with his perception that you have some power over him, right? The figures are small and then they get big. And of course, I would read you as the woman on the force card or the strength card, and he's the lion, right? As though you have some power um, over him. And given that the woman on the force card is like prying open the mouth of the lion, it makes me think like he might be afraid that in speaking with you, he's going to say something he doesn't want to say, right? And that this makes him unsteady, right? Like with the three of coins, we can say uh, things are unsteady because think of, a chair needs four legs or a table. It needs four legs to be really sturdy. When you've only got three, it's more likely it can sort of fall over. And so there's a sense of instability there. It could be literally related to money. If he's an ex-husband, then I don't know if there's anything to do with money that could be involved. Um, but it could just be more generally that he feels sort of nervously unstable when speaking to you because he's perhaps afraid he's going to say the wrong thing. Um, and and um, And so he's censoring himself or holding back in some way, and that's what then is feeding off to you and coming off as, like, strange, right? And so there's something he feels, overpowered, or like that you when he speaks to you, um, he doesn't have control over himself. That would be a way to put it. If you think about the way that well, I mean, first of all, the lion is an animal as opposed to the woman who is a person. That's one. Two, the woman is physically or metaphorically larger, right? Um, and so he doesn't he doesn't feel like he has total control here, and so he's holding back um, because he's resisting the pull of the interaction between you. You ask in the chat, like, if it's in a good way or a bad way. And so, like, is the thing that he's censoring or holding back, is this a good thing he's holding back or a bad thing? And for that, I would look at the final card again, which is the three coins. And so, I mentioned a moment ago the threes being unstable. And yes, that's certainly true. They can also be unstable because they are growing. So threes can be a number of growth. And so we could think with the three of coins in terms of value that there's a growing sense of value, right? In other words, he might be resisting or holding back because he's afraid that in his speaking with you, he could let it slip, that he feels um, more strongly, perhaps than he did earlier, about the importance of you in his life. So whether that's good or bad, I don't know. That's up to you whether that would be good or bad. Um, but with the coins, we think about what is important to us, what we value, right? Um, what we what is shiny and interesting, right? Um, yeah, and so you say in this chat that he doesn't like to feel anything, and I would say that it's, if we had cups here, I would think of it more in terms of feeling. With the coins, I think of it more in terms of um, finding it valuable and important, but not necessarily in terms of a romantic love, more in a practical sense, right? Of the way in which, with the cups, it's like deep down in your heart, right? And it's sort of nothing else matters. With the coins, it's more like, well, no, this is something that practically in my in my day to day life, my everyday life, um, was valuable to me, right? But not necessarily in a romantic love sense. Here, I'd say it's more in a more practical sense. So I think the center card is what stands out most to me about this. That maybe he feels pulled in multiple directions. We could think about being pulled in multiple directions actually with both of these cards, with the lovers, where we have the two figures pulling the one in the middle, one in each way. And then with force, we have an animal here. And so we could think of a kind of like animal magnetism, that kind of thing. There is an old association of this card with the forces you can't see, right? It's, in the Rider Waite Smith we see this as strength, but in the Marseille Tarot it's la force, and so it's almost like the moon in the sense that it's pushing you or pulling you to do something, right? And so he feels like pulled to open up his mouth, his lion's mouth, and perhaps then reveal that there's more value there than might be immediately available on the surface, right? I've neglected my tea completely. I forgot it's here. I better have some. And welcome 200 or 20 Owl. I think your name's 20 Owl. Welcome. My free reading list is closed right at the moment, um, because what I usually do is I aim to do 10, and I've got 12 on my list right now. So I don't have it open. There is a possibility that I may reopen it if these other folks are no longer available when I come to get to them. So that might happen. Otherwise, I'd be happy to read for you in a future live stream. And I'm also available for paid private readings for anybody who might be interested in that. So next up, we have Cat Goddess. Cat Goddess number 5. If you're here, Cat Goddess, feel free to go ahead and post your question there in the chat. Oh, great. And we've already got it, which is what can I potentially expect for the month ahead? You're welcome, Stormborn. Cool. So, what's coming up for Cat Goddess in the month ahead? And so, this is kind of a general question, and which I'm happy to read for. Um, if you would like to narrow it down into one of the 4 big categories of money, work, love, relationships, or conflict with others, then I can probably give you a more precise reading. But this is a Stormborn. This is a Tarot de Marseille deck. This particular deck is the CBD Tarot de Marseille by the late Dr. Yoav Ben-Dov, published by US Games. Yeah, 20 Owl, if you subscribe to the channel, then you'll be able to see more easily when I have scheduled live streams. Lately, I've been doing them on Sunday afternoons, usually around 2 or 3 o'clock. Um, and hi, Colid. I'm not sure how to say your name. Collegian. Welcome. My free reading list is closed right at the moment. I may reopen it later, but I'd be happy to read for you in a future live stream if you'd be interested in that. It's busy today, which I'm glad of. But I've got 12 folks on my list, and I usually just aim for 10. So I think I've probably got a full queue at the moment. Okay, so we're asking for Cat Goddess. What can she potentially expect in the month ahead? And again, Cat Goddess, if you'd like to narrow that down into work, money, love, or conflict, I can probably get you a more precise reading. And I do offer paid readings. I don't do them live on YouTube, but if you're interested in a paid reading, then you can check out the Linktree link in the video description here, or you can just email me at tarot.hermit.lantern@gmail.com. And I do offer paid private one-on-one video conferencing readings, as well as pre-recorded audio readings. Okay, so let's pull some cards for Cat Goddess. Three batons. Temperance. And the Queen of Coins. All right. So, with a general reading like this, I'd look at the first card down to give me a sense of the theme of like where this is going. And with batons, Uh, Two things come to mind. One, of course, is work. So I'd be interested um, to know, Cat Goddess, if you're currently employed, if you're currently working. Because one way I could read this would be in terms of your work situation, but the other way to read this would be with batons building relationships with others, and I think that particularly too because we do have two of these human figures here, right? Uh, and so we could think about potentially like what is the relationship between them? Excuse me. So I'll just start talking, and then feel free, Cat Goddess, to jump in if there's any additional context that you'd like to provide. So, in the month ahead, what can you expect? That is the question. And what we've got is three batons. So, like putting in some effort, although, three's not a ton, right? Like four would be a steady amount, and three is like just under that. So we might think about part-time work or even a full-time job where like you don't have to work super hard at it, if that makes sense, right? Um, if we're thinking about a relationship with another person, it would suggest, well, you don't have to work super hard to make the relationship with this other person work, right? Um, on the other hand, with temperance here at the center, we can think of finding a balance, of course, or like taking a middle path or that kind of thing. But the other thing I do think with temperance that can come up is like she is working so diligently to pour the contents of these vessels back and forth. She's practically doing the impossible, right? Because gravity, of course, would pull these down, pull the water down. And so with temperance, I do think there's also a sense of like, why am I trying to make it all so perfect? Why does it have to be perfectly balanced? Why am I in this constant flow of maintaining the status quo and working so hard to do that when what I get out of it from this Queen of Coins is just one shiny coin? So there is, I do think, a sense here of like putting in effort in order to maintain a balance, but then wondering like, why am I doing this again? Is it paying off? Right? I feel like that's the question here is whatever you're doing, whether it's at your job if you're working, or if there's another person, probably a woman, that you have a relationship of any kind with, right? Like a friend or something, could be a family member. Um, is it worth it to put in 3 units of effort when you're getting sort of 1 unit of reward for it, especially when there's all of this pouring back and forth, hemming and hawing, and maybe you feel like you have to be an angel because, of course, temperance there is an angel. Maybe you feel like you have to be an angel in front of this person, and like, should you keep doing it? What if you spilled a drop? Like, what if you let some of that liquid fall out instead of insisting sort of obsessively that it be measured perfectly back and forth from one vessel to the other, on and on and on, over and over and over again? Because that's what I see temperance doing is, she's incessantly pouring the liquid back and forth in order to maintain balance. Uh, and is it balanced? Right? We've got three batons to one coin. And so there's perhaps a sense here of one person trying to maintain balance in a dynamic which is actually imbalanced. Does that make any sense? Does that ring true with what could be coming forward? I mean, I guess I should link this back to your question, which is what can you potentially expect for the month ahead? And so that's how I would frame it is you may feel like you're trying to maintain balance in the month ahead when you're in a context or a situation that is not balanced. And so you might want to ask yourself in the month ahead, um, what if you didn't? What if you didn't maintain balance, right? Like, is it worth it for you um, to maintain the status quo, or is it okay to just say, you know what? I am not going to be the angel that makes this situation work, right? Maybe I'm going to let things fall apart a little bit in order to demonstrate to everyone that it's not me who's the problem, but it's the whole dynamic of the situation is imbalanced. I mean, I get the sense here of like whether it's at home or at work or with your friendships or whatever it is that like you might be the one holding things together, right? Like you're sort of the glue that's keeping things going. And then in this upcoming month, you might want to ask yourself, what if I didn't? Like, do people think that everything's fine because I make it fine? And if that's taking a toll on you, you might ask yourself, well, what if I were to stop making everything fine in order to show the other person or other people what's actually wrong with the whole dynamic of our relationship or workplace or whatever it might be. I know that I've been in that situation in the past where, particularly in like a work situation where I'm like, everything seems fine here, but it's only because I'm bending over backwards to make it seem fine. And if I let something slip through, um, the hope then is that I can point to the way in which the whole system is flawed, that it's not me, right? Like it only works because I'm working around the problems. And if I let something slip through, then maybe I can point out to other people the way in which our dynamic or system or our relationships um, have something that needs to be adjusted. Yeah. And so I'm not sure how to take your comment in the chat, if that's confusion or what that might be. All right. Well, next up we have Noxie, who I think is new. I don't think I've read for Noxie before. It's possible I've forgotten though. I've read for a lot of folks, but you're welcome, Cat Goddess. All right. Noxie's question is also about career. We had a career question earlier. So, Noxie wants to know, what is my highest career potential? Can I ask, do you have a career in mind? or a field in mind? A career field in mind? Okay. Currently working but new. And you have a side passion. Okay. And welcome, Raghad. My list is currently closed at the moment because it's very full. It's fuller than I'd anticipated, which is which is good. I'm glad of that. Um, but I've got it closed right now. I may reopen it if there's extra time. Otherwise, I'd be happy to read for you in a future live stream. And I do also offer paid private readings for anyone who might be interested in those. And you can check the Linktree link in the description of the video for more information. I also invite you to email me at tarot.hermit.lantern@gmail.com. Okay, so for Noxie, what is Noxie's highest career potential? And we'll do 3 cards. Oh, 9 cups. Okay, 7 swords and justice. Ooh, this is good. Okay, so you said that you have a job at the moment, but that you're new at, right? But that you also have a side hustle, I think, side passion. Side passion is the way you put it. Okay, so the 9 cups. This traditionally in cartomancy is the card of the heart's desire, right? This is your passion. This is what your heart truly, truly wants, right? Which for some people coincides with their job, but for many or most, um, is separate from the job, right? Because trying to get those things to intersect with one another can be quite tough. So you asked specifically about your highest career potential, and so seeing this card comes up does make me think that the highest career potential you have has something to do with what you really desire, right? Like with your heart's desire, that the thing that you want to do that is not constrained by context or money or practicalities or things like that, right? So this side passion that you have, which you say in the, this is great that you say in the chat is has some elements of that. So that's fantastic. And then we see quite a number of swords, which we want to talk about, and the justice card. And so with the swords, we can think about being very strategic about things, and that you may need to investigate further or that you could be tested in some way. Swords are tough in the sense that, it's a weapon. And so we use them to defend ourselves, we use them to fight, we use them to impose order, that kind of thing. And so um, there's a sense that in following your true passion, your heart's desire, you're going to be tested. In other words, that it would not be an easy way forward. However, the outcome is justice. And so here we can think first off, I think of balance again, because of course, justice has these scales, right? Which justice can use to weigh things, right? In order to do what? Well, to make the right decision, right? I think justice is often about making the right decision. And how do you make the right decision? Well, very, very slowly. This is a very slow card. Think about the old saying, the wheels of justice turn slowly, right? Uh, Making the right decision or finding this balance doesn't happen right away. It's something that will likely require um, you to investigate things very carefully, and you're going to be tested by it, but eventually it's going to come out right. Um, Slowly, it will come out right. Okay. So, to link this back to the specific question that you asked about what is your highest career potential, your highest career potential absolutely involves whatever that side passion of yours is. Seeing the nine cups here validates that your highest career potential does lie in that area or that field, whatever that might be, right? But it's going to take a long time and you're going to be tested before you're going to be able to balance that into your life. Um, we could also think here to get a little more specific about highest career potential, justice, think about this sort of, what's the word I want? Position that the figure of justice has a very much a position of authority, right? Justice gets to make important decisions about what happens and what happens to other people, right? Like if we saw a page over here or even a knight or something, we might think, well, the greatest potential is sort of at a lower rank, right? But justice is quite a high rank. Now, maybe they're not an emperor or a empress or something like that, but on the other hand, um, if the emperor were to break the law, justice is the one who would sentence the emperor, right? And so I would say with this passion of yours, this side passion of yours, that if you can work your way through the necessary sort of being tested by it in order to improve, the potential is quite great, right? Reaching a potential in which you would have say in making the kinds of decisions that would very significantly affect other people. So, overall, I'd say this is a really positive reading in the sense of having a very great or very high career potential. But I will say, to put a little tension on it, this Seven of Swords in classical cartomancy, this is the card that represents tears, right? And so um, there might be you might have to go through some tests, some trials, some struggles, some pain, even, right? That make you want to cry before um, you can reach that career potential, if that makes sense. But in terms of the actual potential, following the heart. So if we wanted to look at a specific field, uh, I would definitely want to focus on the justice card again to think about, well, law is the first thing that comes to mind, but I don't know if you have any interest in that. But law is one possibility. Others would be any kind of position or career in which you have to weigh evidence in order to make the right decision, right? So, like an analyst is a possibility, um, because they're like weighing data in order to, and it's slowly over time in order then to make the right kind of decision. Um, it could be any career that is using, because I think of justice as being very logical, methodical, analytical. And so any career in which you would use your mind in order to sort of deliver the right verdict, we might say, right? Like, based on this evidence, based on all the facts, right? Using your mind to weigh that evidence and then deliver a course of action, right? Like, I sentence you to 3 years, or you're free to go, right? Like a decisive, because that's of course with the sword. It's weighing the evidence in order to use that sword to say this is how it is, to make a cut and say, here we go. We're going to make the cut right here. Why? Because I looked at all the evidence and this is where it needs to happen, right? So that we get to the outcome that we're hoping to get, whatever that might be. So very much someone who's logical, analytical, looking at facts, at evidence, and who has a method, right? It's not someone who's necessarily creatively just, you know, working from intuition or anything like that. It's kind of the opposite of that. It's looking at, here's a system that has been developed. And if we look at the facts and the data and we use the method that the system provides us, then here is the precise action that we're going to take based on that. That's how I think of justice. She's not the kind to be swayed by pleas or hopes or bribes or anything like that. She follows the structure, she follows the method. And hi, I'm just looking at the chat. Hi, Nisi. I am not a Virgo. I'm a Taurus, actually. So of course that means my birthday's coming up, and I chose my channel name because I asked my tarot cards what to name my channel, and I got the Hermit, and so the Hermit's Lantern, shedding light where there was none before. That's that's my channel. And hi, Lolo. Great to see you. My list is closed right at the moment because it's quite full. I've got a lot of folks on it. But of course, I'd be very happy to read for you in a future live stream. And I am, of course, available for paid private readings for anyone who might be interested. Uh, you're also welcome to email me at tarot.hermit.lantern@gmail.com. And so next up on my list is Pinkest. Pinkest, if you're here, go ahead and post your question. You're welcome, Noxie. You're very welcome. I'm happy to read for you. I'm glad to have a new person here in the mix. So, second call for Pinkest. If you're here, Pinkest, please post your question or at least let us know that you're typing. And just because I'm curious, my neighbor's dogs are barking in the background. Do you guys hear that? I don't know if there's anything I can do about it, but I hope it's not annoying if you can. Okay, good. Okay, cool. So, last call for Pinkest. If you're here, Pinkest, I can read for you. Otherwise, guys, what I'll do is I'll move on to the next person on the list because I've got six more on my list for today. My goal was to do 2 hours, which would give me 25 minutes. There's no way I'm going to get through six in 25 minutes. So, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to add unless all six of these people aren't here. But I see Chaloon, for example, is here. So, um, I doubt that's going to happen. So, but again, I'd be very happy to read for you in a future live stream, or we could set up a private paid reading. Yeah, and Selam is here too. Good. Okay, so last call for Pinkest. If Pinkest is not here, then Chaloon, you are welcome to post your question in the chat, and I'll pull some cards for you. Okay, here we go for Chaloon. What are his true intentions towards me in terms of whether this connection is worth my time and energy? Great. Okay. What are his true intentions towards Chulun in terms of whether this connection is worth my time or their time, Chulun's time and energy? Here we go. We'll lay three cards. The world. Next to the devil. Three cups. Well, I haven't had the devil come up in a while. so, the world is you, right? We've got this beautiful um, woman dancing. And with this card, we can think of someone who's very self reliant. She's got her shit together, right? She's elevated herself in a particular way. And of course, just to be clear, we're thinking about this from his perspective, right? What are his intentions towards you? And so we're thinking not about how you think about yourself or how other people think about yourself, but about how he views you, right? And so he sees you as someone who like doesn't need other people, which doesn't mean that you're like a loner or don't have friends or anything, but you've got this wreath or kind of cocoon around you, indicating, right, like you're well protected and you can take care of your own stuff, your own life, while at the same time you have all of these associates, friends, or family members, or whoever they might be, who are close to you. But while it's wonderful to have them, you you're fine on your own, right? You're self reliant in that sense. Um, and so that's the first card down, and so that we can think of that as sort of setting the tone for how he sees you, right? Then we come to the devil. Here we've got a very large, imposing demonic figure, right? With two smaller figures chained or yoked or roped um, to him. And so um, I think there's a sense here of his intentions a little bit being wanting to take you outside of your self-reliant cocoon where you don't need other people, although you're close to them, and putting you in a level where you're kind of chained to him, right? In other words, I think there's a tension here, um, in that his feelings or intentions towards you may involve needing to feel needed, and that right now he might feel like if you don't need him, you won't stick around. And so, through probably a sense of maybe some insecurity or fear on his part, he may be wanting to kind of chain you to him because that would make him feel safe, right? That like you can't get away if you're a little bit kind of reliant on him, right? Um, so that's the first big um, tension that I see here is between the woman, self-reliant, beautiful on her own, and then she moves and kind of becomes a little devil, right? Who is down on his level. We could even think of the way that the tone of it is she moves from up to down so that she's kind of down on his level, and the two of you are sort of bound to one another in a way that you can't necessarily get free again, not without quite some struggle, right? Uh, and so our final card, the Three of Cups, suggests with the cups, it does suggest that the motivation for him to think this way is because he does have a real growing desire for you, right? That is genuine. In other words, I don't think there's a sense here like if we saw some swords at the end, we might say, well, he wants to bind you to him or bring you down to his level just because he wants to hurt you. That's not it. He wants to do it because of his desire for you, right? I think it's more a sense of insecurity that if you're too self-reliant that you'll leave him, right? So, this is um, anytime I see the devil, I say, well, watch out, right? Make sure you have a really clear sense of what's going on because, of course, the devil doesn't make promises in good faith, and the devil makes bad contracts, and the devil can lie, or if not lie, can misrepresent things so that what you think is true is not really true, and you didn't read the fine print, and it's can get very messy in that way. Um, so so there you go. You would have to decide for yourself, given that he does have what look like true, intense, tender, or romantic feelings that are growing for you, you would have to decide whether it's worth working through the insecurities that he might have, and whether or not um, you can get around his feeling of needing to be sort of bound to him. Um, if it requires that you forfeit your position as we see you in the world card, where you are stable and elevated and, dancing and carefree and all of that kind of thing. Um, do you want to sort of be dragged down onto his level? Or do you think, is there a way that you could, um, as you put it, like put in effort um, to sort of help him work through those insecurities or not? I can absolutely imagine someone looking at this and saying, no way, right? Like, it doesn't matter if his motivation is because of a true feeling of love that is growing. If what he wants to do is drag me down, then I am out of here, right? And that would be a completely legitimate response, I think, to these cards. On the other hand, if I'm going to read it sort of awry from the other angle, which I do like to do, the devil can be a lot of fun. That's the other thing is, when I see a card like the devil, I think of some of the ridiculous nights out I spent in my 20s and some of the things that I did. And boy, I regretted it sometimes the next day. But looking back, it is nice to have those memories. But they weren't, they were a lot of fun, but I paid dearly for them. I'll put it like that. And so that's how I think of the devil too, is you will almost never have more fun than when you're with the devil, but can you afford it? Is it worth it? If you really are into this person and are very attracted to them and want to sort of go through this with them, you might have part of it might be having a really good time. But if it means giving up your position, your cocoon, right? The way you've wreathed yourself, then you would have to decide for yourself, is that worth it? Is dancing with the devil worth it if you can dance just as well on your own? And, sometimes it might be, and other times you might say, that is not what I'm looking for, um, and give that up. So that's sort of the dilemma, the choice that you're, I think, faced with here is his true intentions, I think, are motivated by a genuine sense of desire and love. But because of insecurities, I think he's going to want to put you in a position that um, would make it sort of tough to get away from him. And as attractive as the devil can be, that may not be worth it. You're welcome, Chaloon. I wish you very good luck with that, and keep us updated if you'd like to about what happened with, or what happens um, with your decision to dance with the devil or not. Okay, so next we have Selama. These will be our last four for the day. Selama next, followed by Ari, um, Rahul, and Jas. So Selama is next. If you're here, Selama, go ahead and let us know and post your question in the chat. All right. Hello, Jada Farrell. Welcome. And we've got our question from Selama, which is, what is my next job position after being laid off for a long time? Okay, what is Selama's next job position after being laid off for a long time? And hi, Jada. Right now, my list for free readings is closed just because it's so full. But I'd be happy to read for you in a future live stream. And I am also available for paid private readings. And you can check out my Linktree link in the video description for more information about those. Okay, so for Selama, Justice again for a career question. Okay. So just a moment ago, or I don't know how long ago it was, I spoke about the Justice card in relation to a career question and what that entails. And so I'll repeat some of that here, just because I don't know if Salama was in the room when I was discussing it. But you were asking about a particular kind of job, and so we see justice come up, and so. Um, as I said, this card is about someone who uses their mind to make decisions, right? And important decisions that affect other people, right? And they do this by gathering facts and evidence and weighing that evidence in a very methodical, systematic kind of way in order to issue a judgment, right? And so we can think about any kind of position having to do with law or an analyst of some kind, right? Like a business analyst, that kind of thing. Um, Someone who is using their mind to make decisions that affect what happens to other people. There's someone who's not going to be swayed by pleas or emotions or bribes or anything like that. They have a systematic method and they follow it, right? It's like they open up their law book or their rule book or their could even be like just a job handbook, right? Like you get a job somewhere and they say, here are our procedures. Here's how we do things. And so it's someone who then follows that method that's laid out for them that they didn't necessarily create, right? But that perhaps preexists them, right? And then they take all of the um, evidence into mind and they weigh it. And based on that, they make a judgment. They make a decision about how to act or what the outcome should be based on that. So it's going to be some kind of a job there where you are analyzing things, right, in order to make decisions. Um, Now let's think about the other 2 cards because I think that they very much like an earlier reading, um, are there's a lot today coming out, it seems, about how terrible the job market is in, uh, well, perhaps globally. I don't know. I don't know where everybody's located, but I'm on the West Coast of the United States, and so I'm coming from that context and perspective, but, 7 coins for 10 batons. 7, 10, right? And so we can think again about the batons being the effort that you're putting in, the work that you're putting in, right? And then the coins are the reward for that effort, right? Um, and so 7 in exchange for 10. So unfortunately, again, this is suggesting a job where the work is overwhelming, right? And the money isn't quite enough or not as much as it should be, or you feel that it's not quite as much as it should be, which seems to be increasingly the case nowadays, right? So with 7 coins, we can think uh, that you're being compensated for the job, right? But that the work is overwhelming, right? 10 is as many as there can be on any one card, right? And with batons, we think about the effort you're putting in, the pressure you're under, how much building work you're doing, right? And so 10 is just a lot, we could even say too much, right? Um, Especially in comparison to the coins. If we had 10 coins for 10 batons, then I might say something like, "Well, it's really a lot of work, but you are fairly compensated for it," right? But when we see 7 to 10, it's more like it's really a lot of work, and it doesn't quite feel like it's, fairly compensated, if that makes sense. Which doesn't mean that you can't or shouldn't even take it, right? Because, potentially, I don't know, it could lead to something else or it's another line on your resume and you could use it to negotiate your way into another position elsewhere or something like that. People do that kind of thing all the time. So, um, we could also think here with the 7 of coins in the center that it may be the kind of job that, challenges your mind, right? Because with justice is so analytical and methodical and logical that this could, um, be a challenge, not necessarily in a bad way, a challenge to the way that you think, right? And so you may really have to work at that, like to follow procedures or method or the system or whatever it might be, right? That would be another um, insight to take away from the 7 of coins there. And I say that because of the way that the 7 it's an odd number, right? And it's kind of the one of the more awkward numbers, right? Like this coin doesn't quite fit. It's like if you think of the coins as representing your mind, there's one that's like sort of awkwardly in the middle of these other 6, and it's not symmetrical. It doesn't fit up here and it doesn't really makes sense down there, and there's like an idea that comes out of this that doesn't quite fit. And so it's in that sense that it is a challenge to your mind. Um, it's also possible to think with the coins that if we don't think of them as money or the mind, we could think of them as your values, right? Like what is important to you as a person, that they could challenge. There could be some challenge about something that you value, right? Um, that it's potentially even an obstacle to something that you value, right? That the job, perhaps because of its overly analytical character, is putting things in conflict with something that you value, right? Like, oh, I don't know, if there's maybe a rule at work, like if this number is over a certain amount, then you have to do this. And you might say, but that doesn't seem like that doesn't align with my values, right? I want to do what I think is the right thing to do, not what the handbook or the rules or the system tells me that I have to do. And so that would be an example of something that challenges your values. So the short answer to the question is the next job would be something that involves your your mental capacity, your ability to weigh evidence and make decisions in a way that may not pay as much as you'd hope, even though you'll be under quite a lot of pressure, and that may pose a challenge either to your thinking or your values. Okay. Next up, we have Ari. Ari, if you are here, you are next on the list. Yay, you're here. Cool. So go ahead and. All right, we've got the question. Great. All right, let's see. Okay, so the question from Ari is, can you tell me how my firstborn will be? Like what kind of a child your firstborn will be? And you're interested in gender, if we can do that. And what is the zodiac element most of your kids will belong to if it's not balanced? So think there's sort of two questions there. So let's go with the first one. And in a later live stream, I could go for the second one, but I think I'd want to pull cards separately for each question for the sake of precision. But um, we can we can try to get a sneak peek at your firstborn child. I've never had this question before, so that's kind of why I do this live stream, is to get questions that I've never had before that force me to expand um, the way that I read the cards, and so I'm grateful for that. see what we get. What will Ari's firstborn child be like? All right, 3 cards, 2 coins, temperance, and a sword. Okay. Well, um, okay. So I've read for you lots of times, Ari, so I kind of know your personality, and I feel like I can um, say some things I might not otherwise say. So you asked about gender, and so the first thing I think is a boy, because it ends with the sword, right? And so that's kind of obvious, right? And also the two coins and a sword. You can build the image for yourself, but that makes me think of a boy if we're talking about gender. Um, in terms of like what will the baby be like, what kind of personality or like what might you notice about the baby, um, the two coins would make me think a talker, right? um, with the coins we think about exchanging ideas, right? And so like a vocal kind of baby, but one who exhibits a kind of um, curiosity or interest in the world around them or in other people, right? And so then attempts to vocalize, like through baby talk at first, of course, in order to engage with their interest in the world around them. So that's one. Um, the temperance card is really nice here, I think, to see in the middle, because, of course, with temperance, we think moderation. And it's a very calm, soothing kind of card often. And then, of course, it suggests balance, right? And so, an evenly tempered baby, we might say, a balanced, moderate child, in other words, not one that's given to major extremes of emotions. Of course, all babies are, of course, going to cry and, um, giggle and be happy and things like that, but in a moderate kind of way, in a balanced kind of way. This card, I think, suggests also, it's an angel, right? So we could say, well, the baby's like a little angel, right? Uh, the last thing I'd say is with the Ace of Swords, there there is some trouble, right? But it's only one, right? If we think about the intensity of the number of the cards with swords, we've got trouble, but it's the lowest possible number, right? From 1 to 10. We've just got the 1. Um, the other thing we could say, of course, with the ace over here is, um, we could say dark hair, right? Because, with the swords, I think of, more dark in terms of complexion, and if we read that specifically at the end, um, of the string, because I would put more weight on the end of the string there. So that's something else we could add. So very much a sense of balance with the 2 coins and with the temperance, like an evenly tempered kind of baby. I'm gonna say boy because of the sword and the 2 coins. That gives me an image. The angel of temperance there. There's the old saying of like, "Oh, that baby's an angel," where, well, there's the angel. Although it's maybe an angel who sometimes has a sword, right? So an angel who very, very occasionally can be a little bit choleric, right? A little bit irksome, a little bit, as you know, I guess it depends on the person, but babies are like that, right? But it's not like a Ten of Swords where we would be like, "Oh my God, you're never gonna sleep." You know what I mean? This looks to me more like a baby that will at least give you some sleep when it's young. Yeah. So let me just look over the chat here and make sure I haven't missed anything. Um, okay, you're very talkative. So yeah, I can see the two of you being vocal, talkative with each other, right? Um, yeah, chatty even when they don't speak actual words. When you say stare at people, and with these, with coins, I do think of vision too, and with 2, we can think of, like, 2 eyes, right? So, um, showing a great interest in what they look at, in what the baby looks at, as well as conversation. Yeah, I like that. Sagittarius, Libra, or Gemini with the balancing, right? Yeah, good. And hi, April. I see you in the chat there. Welcome. My list is closed at the moment because um, it's my aim in each live stream is to do 10, and I'm up to 12. So I had to close it off after I committed to the 12. But I'd be very happy to read for you, April, in a future live stream if that interests you. And I am also available to everyone for paid private readings if that is of interest. So, next on my list, I have Rahul. Rahul, if you are here, you are next up. And Zainab, hi. I see you in the chat there. Welcome. I was just explaining to April that my list is closed at the moment because it's full. I usually aim for to do 10 readings and I'm up to 12 today. So I've closed the list off for free readings today, but I'd be very happy to read for you in a future live stream. And if you're subscribed to the channel, you can see a little more easily when I've scheduled a live stream. I usually have been doing them Sunday afternoons. Okay, so second call for Rahul. Second call for Rahul. Oh, there you are. Rahul's here. Okay. I'm glad to have you as a subscriber, Zainab. Welcome. Okay, so Rahul says next month I have CA, maybe California exams, feeling anxious a lot. Will I be successful? Okay. Yeah, Ari, with the sword at the end, I would think dark brown or black, exactly. Hair, yes. So Rahul has an exam coming up. Will Rahul be successful with that exam? For the eyes, Ari, too, I might think because it was 2 coins, and so I might think lighter eyes, maybe. Um because, coins are paler in color, and so maybe darker hair but lighter eyes. And I just say that with eyes because, the 2 coins look like eyes, and, um, I think they shine, they're lighter, so maybe lighter eyes and darker hair? Although if it doesn't refer actually to color, it could just mean, very bright-eyed, right? Not necessarily referring to the color of the eyes, but just like their sort of alertness. Okay, for Rahul. You're welcome, Ari. For Rahul, will the exam he's taking be successful? All right, 2 batons, chariot, and the knight of coins. And the knight of coins is facing something, and so I think I'd like to flip this up. Okay, here we go. All right, let me take a peek at this for a moment, organize my thoughts. Okay, so let me explain what I see here. Well, let me give you an answer and then I'll explain what I see. Uh, the answer is probably yes, successful. And the reason I say that is because of the suit of the final card, which is a coin. And that would suggest probably yes. Uh, Let me point out what I see here in the rest of the other cards. So, the 2 of batons here, you can see this is your exam, I think. You're at a crossroads, right? It can either go one way, right? Or it could go the other way. And you're sort of at the intersection there of which way is it going to go. Uh, with the chariot, what do chariots do? Well, they drive. So you're driving forward, you're moving forward. But if you notice, there's um, a repetition or a rhyme, we might call it, between the 2 batons, and then we've got 2 horses. And the 2 horses are sort of maybe one's trying to go one way and the other's trying to go the other way. And so there might be a sense of like being pulled in separate directions. And notice that the charioteer hasn't got the reins, right? So the chariot is moving forward, but it's going wherever it's going because the horses have decided where it's going, and the charioteer is kind of just along for the ride, as opposed to having reins, so that he can, control where things are going. So it might feel a little bit out of control, like you're trying to drive a car without a steering wheel or drive a chariot without holding the reins, right? But what happens is you sort of abandon one of your horses, right? So I see the figure of the chariot turns into this knight of coins and and sort of says, "I can't do both of these things, but I can do one of them well." And so if I get out of the chariot and get on this one horse, I see now he's got the reins. I can control this one horse very well, and I can ride that horse to meet the emperor. The emperor is the person who will decide whether you have passed or failed the exam, right? So in the end, we have you on one horse, not trying to control two, right? With your coin, your the brightness of your mind, and using that intellect, right, to make an exchange with the emperor, and the emperor looks at you and probably, again, because of the coin, um, to the extent that you can use your mind, probably um, gives you an approval on your exam, right? Um, so there is, I think, a sense here of maybe two things you're working at that are at cross purposes, right? Like two batons, two horses, and you maybe will need to get rid of one of those things in order to do the other one well, right? But if you are trying to control both at once, that may be a struggle. And the success happens when you manage to focus on the one thing that is most important, most valuable to you. And if that happens, then I think success is likely in the face of this emperor who is there to act and make decisions about what happens next. Yeah. Yeah. And so you say in the chat that you're dealing with multiple subjects and what to do first. And so this the multiple subject thing definitely suggests like a need for focus, right? You can do one of these things very well, but if you try to do both of them or more than one, um, then I think you're more likely to struggle. So if there's a way that you can pare things down or focus on one thing, I think that is where you're most likely to get success. And welcome, Wong, Joey. Um, my list is full today. Unfortunately, I'm reaching the end of my live stream, and I usually aim for 10, and I'm past that. So I've closed off the list for today, but I would be very happy to read for you in a future live stream. I've been tending to do them on Sunday afternoons, but I am also available for paid private readings for anyone who might be interested in those. And you can check out the Linktree link in the video description for that. But I did have to close the list quite a while ago just because um, my goal is to stream for 2 hours, and I'm at 2 hours and 22 minutes right now, and I've got one more on the list. So I had to close it off. But I'm glad you're here, Wong, Joey, and I'd be happy to read for you in a future live stream. So Raul, that's my advice, I suppose, based on the cards here, is that you are most likely to be successful if you can sort of bet on one horse, right? As opposed to trying to control multiple that are going in different directions. All right. And so that brings us to Jas. Happy medium. Thanks for being patient. And your question is about the upcoming month of May and what's coming for you. You're welcome, Raul. And so, Jas, I will do general readings like this. If you'd like to narrow it down into one of the following categories, I can usually make the reading more precise: love, work, money, or conflict. Those are the sort of big areas, I think, represented, of course, by the four suits of the minor arcana. And so if you're particularly concerned about a relationship or work or money or a conflict with someone, um, if we sort of put a border on the reading, then you can get a better answer, I think. And you say love. Okay, so what's coming up in the next month in terms of your relationships, particularly love relationships? Great. Okay. So for Jas Happy Medium, what's coming up for them in the month of May in terms of love? Here we go. Three cards. The World, the Knight of Batons, and the King of Cups. So, Jess, I don't know you. I think I have read for you, but um, I don't have a lot of context. I'm just going to start talking, and then if you want to fill any context in there in the chat, um, please, I encourage you to do that. But what we see is a woman and two other people. The king is a man, and then the knight is probably a man, could be a woman, depending on the context. But so Jess, if you are a woman, then I would assign the agency here of the world card to you, in which case I would say, in terms of love, there are potentially two um, men who are um, coming forward, or who will be present in the month of May, and because that's the time frame that you specified in the question. The one interesting thing here, of course, is if we look at um, the gestures of the figures on the cards, if we look at the way that they are looking, the way they are facing, um, the world card, you're sort of looking to the left, back, right? And then both of the men here are looking to the right. In other words, they're there in your vicinity, but you don't see each other, right? Like they're just behind your back, or you're just behind their back. Um, and so this suggests to me that there are love opportunities there, um, two, right? But that they're not from somewhere where you're currently looking, and you're not in their line of sight either, right? You don't see them, but also they don't see you, even though you're near one another. So that's one thing to note. Uh, on the world card, we have the woman figure, and she's surrounded by this wreath or cocoon or egg shape, or whatever you'd like to call it, which is on the one hand suggests that she has elevated herself, and that she is self-reliant, and she can take care of herself, and she's protected and all of those great things. But the other side to that coin is that it does sort of isolate her potentially a little bit, right? And so it's not only that none of you are seeing each other, but also you're sort of protected or isolated for some reason from these potential suitors, right? Um, does it mean a cycle is going to be completed? It can, and you're thinking here of the way that the World card is the last card, the 21 in the major arcana, and so it's the end of the fool's journey and all of that kind of thing. It can certainly suggest that a cycle comes to an end in a way that makes it feel like you've accomplished something in making yourself self-reliant, right? Like you can take care of yourself. You have friends and associates and other people around you, but also you are capable of taking care of yourself and safe, definitely safe. Yes. Um, but with the safety and the self-reliance and taking care of yourself, that could also be, making it harder for others to sort of get to you, if that makes sense. And so there may be a way in which you need to, I mean, I guess one way to say it would be kind of demonstrate vulnerability, um, in order for to sort of get closer to other people, right? Like, sometimes what can happen is in order to be safe, people kind of put up walls to others, but actually to get closer, sometimes what you have to do is bring the walls down by making yourself vulnerable in some way, not in a dangerous way, but for example, by like, I don't know, sharing a difficult feeling you're having or a challenge that you're going through or something from your past that people don't know about, that kind of thing can demonstrate vulnerability and then help you sort of open up to other people. Of course, you would want them to reciprocate and it to be a balanced relationship. Yeah. Yeah. So there is a sense that maybe you're not as open as you could be. Um, and that might be why these people can't, quote unquote, "see you," right? They could be people who literally see you, but who maybe you don't see them or they don't see you as a potential love interest, right? So just because 'cause they're not looking doesn't mean that you literally don't know them. They could be because they're so close to you, they could be people that you do interact with, right? But they don't see you in that way, if that makes sense, right? Yeah, and so let's talk about these other 2 people more specifically as individuals now. Um, so the Knight of Batons here, this would be a guy who is, a hard worker, right? Adventurous, um, gets his work done, but who's also like he's like an employee, right? He's not brand new. He hasn't just started, but he's not like a king where he's not the boss, if that makes sense, right? It's someone who's developing their career, developing their work skills, and who has made some progress, but they're not like in charge, if that makes sense. And they would be a practical, social, industrious kind of person, right? The King of Cups, this is more likely to be a family man, right? Um, it could even potentially be like a father, right? Someone who already has kids. The King of Cups is can be that kind of person, a figure, a father person. Um, but it can also just be an older man, not old, but like mature, like over 35 probably. Or if not actually over 35, mentally of that mature kind of mindset. Uh, who's interested in romance and matters of the heart and potentially the arts as well, like a creative kind of person, like someone who's interested in um, oh, I don't know, museums and films and arts and philosophy and that kind of thing. That's what I would think with the cups there, like someone who's interested in the beauty of the world, right? So an older man who's more interested in romance and beauty and maybe already has um, a strong link to their family, right? And then, second, a younger man, probably younger, and again, if not actually younger, then younger in terms of personality, right? Whose focus is more on career and work, and a more practical kind of mindset. And you ask about the friend zone. It could definitely be the friend zone. Yeah, it could definitely be the idea that um, that it's someone who's literally near to you, but you don't see each other that way because, there's a ring around you, right? There's a protective shell around you, um, that, um, that makes it, like, not seem feasible or plausible that it would be a love kind of relationship as opposed to just, friendship. And hi, Tainita, welcome. My list is currently closed. I'm just reaching the end of the live stream here, but I'd be very happy to read for you in a future live stream. I usually aim to do about 10 readings, and I'm at 12 today, so I've got to close out. I've got some other things I've got to take care of. I've been scheduling the live streams usually on Sunday afternoons lately, and if you subscribe to the channel, um, you can click on me there in YouTube and see when I've scheduled my future live streams. But I'd be very happy to read for you in a future live stream. All right. Well, that brings us about to the end of the session for today. And so I want to say thank you to everyone who came and participated in the chat and asked questions. And I really appreciate it, you guys. This means a lot to me. I very much enjoy these live streams. And I wish if I didn't have a job, I'd do them more often. But, I've got to take care of my day to day stuff. Um, so thanks again, and thanks for being kind in the chat and asking questions and letting me read for you. And if I didn't get to read for you again, I'd be very happy to read for you in the future. I encourage you to subscribe to the channel so that you can see when I've scheduled future live streams. And I think that will do it for today. Thanks, everybody. Have a fantastic end to your weekend and a great week coming up. And be kind to each other, be well, and I will see you all next time. Bye, everybody.